The Airbnb Story by Leigh Gallagher. What is it? What is the story behind another tech company, this one in home sharing? There's a common argument people bring up in our age's business climate and discussions about what makes a successful business today. You know, Uber they don't make taxis, they host them. Netflix doesn't make movies or shows, although I guess they clearly found a way around that. Turo doesn't make cars, they have people rent them, but they host these things. Airbnb hosts property. To say that nouns are turning into verbs at this point in history is kind of an understatement. And it's becoming less and less absurd every single day. But what went into that for Airbnb? Those other companies, those are, different video topics. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sam, and I want to make self-growth normal. If that's something you're open to, because no one should have to look this information up. It should just be mainstream knowledge. Then make sure to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. How 3 ordinary guys disrupted an industry, made billions of dollars, and created plenty of controversy. 4 years ago, this book came out. At the time, Airbnb had a $30 billion valuation. I did a quick search, and in late 2020, no surprise, that more than doubled to now, I think it's 75 billion. They, at the time, had 140 million guest arrivals, which is how many times are people went to a listing, and they had an inventory that was 3 million listings strong. You can't look at numbers like that and not wonder how they took off so exponentially. Well, for one, it offered people a more affordable way to travel. For another, it also made people money using their homes, even if they didn't own the homes. By the way, staying at another person's home, it can be a highly intimate exchange, even if the person whose home it is not there. As the company's old slogan went, travel like a human. There are 3 founders: Brian Chesky, who's basically been in charge since day one, Nathan Blecharczyk, and Joe Gebbia, who I think he's the one who has basically created the company's software infrastructure. What's interesting to me is that although they may be ordinary guys, honestly, really the only ordinary one to me seems like Chesky. They're quite different from each other. If I don't mention this later in the review, I think the last chapter is like a chapter about how they're different from each other and their backgrounds and what they do, and it's really, really fascinating. Before taking off, of course, the business had a bunch of failures that weren't large scale, but they did seem large scale at the time. It reminded me a little bit of, I really hope I'm getting her name right, Jamie Lee Kern's story of IT cosmetics in Believe It. Airbnb, they started using after that what the author Leigh Gallagher referred to as guerrilla marketing tactics, using Craigslist and playing on the election at the time by offering free cereals to guests that I think they made from scratch, and they called them Obama-O's. There was also, I think, McCain Crunch or something like that, but it didn't sell close to as much. Maybe it didn't sound as catchy. Once they took liftoff, they didn't have enough time to focus on those as they began to have more pressing issues to face. Because Airbnb can expand at such a low-cost manner, for example, it only spent $300 million growing in an 8-year period. In what the author, I'm pretty sure, calls the hosting economy, hosting, sharing, I think that might be it. One of their peers, Uber, was said to have lost $1.2 billion in the first half of 2016 alone. That difference is it's multiplied by, I think, 24 or 32 or 64, I don't, maybe I'm blanking here. But that's one reason it's so attractive to investors. Another is something I didn't know about that, of course, Steve Jobs came up with, called the 3-click rule. You shouldn't have to click more than 3 times to buy something, or play a song, or perform any small action that correlates directly with you getting what you want as a consumer. This book was much more like a documentation than anything else, and it is quick to acknowledged multiple times that it was written at a time when Airbnb was still growing, and it's still growing now. So the author was like, I know that Airbnb is nothing close to where it's bound to end up. It's like The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. These guys are really, really playing it. The long game. Really at all. They're not in it for the money, like you may think, but that did highlight a high degree of self-awareness on the author's part. What's fascinating to me is how Airbnb began to create a systemic culture with their hosts of here is what tends to get the best results. Because you make people feel welcome with free welcome baskets and making your bed and making sure that the house stays clean and making them breakfast, making people feel like they belong everywhere they go. Airbnb was able to produce an economy of trust where with buyers and sellers, or I guess hosts and guests, if you will, who participate under a cultural set of ideals. And when you combine those two things, the economy and the cultural set of ideals, that can be very easy to do, or maybe it is. But every other sharing company sucks at it, I guess. I don't know. There's an Uber book I have yet to check out, which I'm pretty excited. But when I heard the whole welcome baskets thing, I was definitely, someone I know, I was definitely thinking a lot about her. The next time I see her, I'm gonna ask her what she thinks about the idea of hosting Airbnb. She's really busy though, I don't know if she has time. The author lists a bunch of occurrences in one chapter, or I think a couple, where just things went wrong on a host's part. Like really wrong. And how Airbnb responded to it, and how they had a lot of trouble responding to it. She also said how rarely these things happen, although she gave so many examples of it. As she states, the scale of the Airbnb platform has grown so large that the fact that these things so rarely happen, the fact that more things haven't gone wrong, it may just show that that trust is well deserved. Giving them the benefit of the doubt, or I mean, that's what it seems like, since it makes sense because you're letting strangers into strangers' homes. Things are gonna go wrong, but that's no excuse to just say, well, let's just let it go, you know, something happened, whatever. That's it, no problem, no nothing. There might be something, but there really is not. And you could say that an issue is considerable, however, that is not exactly the case. One chapter in the middle is this big conundrum about housing and rallies, and well, this chapter is definitely the pinnacle of the controversy listed in the subtitle. At the end of it, this one part stood out. There is a reason so many consumers have embraced Airbnb. It wasn't just three guys out to break all the rules. It was a culmination of forces that were more powerful than that. An epic recession that left people with a much greater incentive to travel cheaply, or to seize upon the opportunity to turn their homes into something monetizable. A general fatigue for the hospitality industry that had become overpriced and over-commoditized. Or commodified? A wave of new millennial values and attitudes that made the idea that a form of travel that was quirky, more eclectic, more original, and more authentic, not just acceptable, but a way of life. And declining trust in government, especially among the middle class, and the search for individual self-sufficient means of economic empowerment. That's a lot of reasons. It's a lot of forces. I will say that the best thing about this book, aside from its info, I mean, how many other books are there about Airbnb? It's really well researched. I think this lady she's like a senior editor at Fortune magazine. The best thing aside from that is how relevant each chapter is to the Airbnb's story as a topic at hand. They're very different from each other, but somehow they're all super relevant. The next chapter, for example, after the one about the controversy, is where we move on to a less touchy, but still very competitive corporate landscape. It answers one burning question and maybe a few more. Should large hotel chains be scared of Airbnb? What's there to be scared of, and why? Certain CEOs of the hotel chains said that there's nothing to worry about, and they just don't buy it. I mean, it's very different segments of the market that you're targeting. At the same time, they're also really overlooking how much Airbnb users love Airbnb use and how they feel like they're part of a community. Community is dangerous for competition. It really is. And how it democratized travel like nothing else ever. According to studies, Airbnb is one of those, like, you know, once you go this, you will never go back. Again, there's also a chapter about each of the founders and how they're all different from each other and their backgrounds, and the backgrounds are so different. It's crazy. What roles they've played in the company's history, what importance each one of them has played in reshaping the hospitality industry. These guys are so ambitious. It's insane. The closing chapter afterward ties everything together beautifully, talking about Airbnb's growth and how this is just the beginning. But this was a really well put together book. I was very impressed. I don't really have that much negative to say about it. I guess the author is she really seems to have some sort of a bias toward Airbnb, but I don't know. I don't know why I wouldn't expect that. I mean, she's a senior editor at Fortune magazine. These people are probably huge fans of Airbnb. But other than that, it's quite stellar. Quotes. When you create an open marketplace that lets the public engage with one another, if it's reflected in society, it'll be reflected on the platform. There are plenty of books on starting a company and plenty on managing people in large organizations, but there aren't a lot of books about the stages in between. The breadth of options offered makes scrolling through Airbnb's listing an exercise in escapism. The LinkedIn co-founder actually said this one. I think his name is Reid Hoffman. If I were giving advice to someone, I would say give serious thought to building a nice treehouse. They have waiting lists for months. The better you know a place, the less you notice it. You can't talk to these people, so you have to hire people to talk to these people. No matter how much someone hates you, it's always better to meet them in person. They didn't build a billion-dollar hotel industry by not knowing how to push back. You cannot kill an idea whose time has come. There's no learning curve for people who are in war or in startups. Direction 1. I recommend this book for anyone who obviously wants to learn more about Airbnb and how it's scaled and where it's at now and where it's bound to go. Direction 2. If you like this book, you definitely might like for a more updated tech-related company founder background and company background and where that company is going to go. Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh for sure, and one that, you know, it's been around a while, but it's still very interesting and for sure well written. Grinding It Out by Ronald McDonald. I'm just kidding. His name is Ray Kroc. The Airbnb Story by Leigh Gallagher. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books that I mentioned in this video, if you want to check those out too. If there are any other books that you guys want me to check out and review, please let me know in the comments below. Also let me know if you checked out this book and you liked it. If you guys buy anything through the links in the description, then I get commission, which helps me to build this channel and keep making these videos. But other than that, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because I don't get why people will watch this far into my videos and they don't subscribe. But if you have subscribed and you want to turn it up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to get a notification whenever I drop new videos, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere, and I will see you then.